Hello and welcome to Unfair Advantage, the podcast from Tin Man Capital. We're a venture capital firm that invests in Series A technology companies that serve large traditional industries. My name is Murli, and I'm your host and a co-founder of the firm. This is a show about how technology impacts your industry, your everyday life, and can put you ahead, all with a uniquely Southeast Asian point of view. We're recording in July 2025, and I'm speaking with my good friend Malina Platon. Malina, thank you for doing this and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Murli. It's a pleasure. And congratulations for starting the podcast. I think it's a great initiative.
Thank you. And I know that many of our listeners are eager to hear from you. Let's just say you're a world-class operator. Let's just put that on the table. And you're also an angel investor, right? But that's not really doing justice to you. Can you introduce yourself in your own words?
In one word, I would describe myself as a builder. I love building teams, global teams, regional team, local teams. I love building businesses from ground up, from zero and taking them to a regional or global scale. My intersection lies at the combination of technology and go-to-market. So I have 18 years of experience in
Hard
global. Yes, time flies. I just realized that this year have been 18 years since I started working. I started working for large multinational companies initially in Europe. My journey started with hardware because 18 years ago, AI, generative AI, there weren't the buzzwords that are today. So I actually started my career in Intel, the chip manufacturing company, and it was the first tech company that I worked for. And started my journey, as I mentioned, in hardware, software, services, digital transformation, digital education space. And in my journey with UiPath, I moved to robotic process automation, which was a very new technology at that time, and progressively moved towards what we call today AI, generative AI, which is not a new concept in the tech space, but rather an evolution of many, many years and many technologies. So yeah, very passionate about AI, very passionate about the business development, sales, and the startup ecosystem in general.
And I have to say, you glossed over a little bit about UiPath. You joined them when they were something like 30 people. And then by the time you left, how many were you and how many places had you personally worked in?
I joined UiPath 2016. Beginning of the year, we were 30 people at that time in a 2-room apartment, smaller than the office where we are now. And when I left UiPath 2022, we were 6,000 people. When I joined, the company was only present in Romania. When I left, the UiPath was present in 50 countries with offices in multiple, probably around 80 cities all across the world. Personally, I have worked across Europe, Asia, including India, Japan, all Southeast Asia, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and have been responsible for the business across both continents. Yeah.
That's an amazing journey from 30 to 3,000 in 6 years.
6,000.
6,000, sorry. Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. And 50 different places that you've been to, as in you've got presence in. I mean, that's just unbelievable growth, right? In terms of anything that any person would hope to achieve in their career. So this is why I said world-class operator.
Thank you.
Having been an early employee of UiPath and then worked in all these places, and since then you've left them, it's been a few years, you basically have, infinite choice. So why are you in Southeast Asia?
When I left UiPath in 2022, I have spent a lot of time reflecting about how do I want to build my life. And during my UiPath journey up to that point, most of my life revolved around work. And I guess it was normal, and maybe a lot of the listeners who are founders or who are part of founding teams or early joiners in a startup identify with this thinking. Your life revolves 100% around the work. So when you think about how do I build my life, it's all about work and then how you can make most of it. So for me, it was exactly the case, especially with the huge UiPath expansion from a business standpoint, from a territory standpoint, which involved a lot of travel as well. So there was very little time for anything else. But when I left UiPath, I took a conscious decision of spending more time not doing anything, but rather reflecting on how did I get to do and achieve all the things which I have done and achieved. What kind of thought process took me to take certain decision or not take certain decision. When I used to be in the journey of growing the company, it was just doing. It was almost zero time for reflection. So now I purposely wanted to take this time and think about what's next for me. How do I use all the experience which I have accumulated, not only for my own good, but also for the good of others? And how can I translate this experience into something valuable that would take me to the next stage of my life and my journey? And initially, I wanted to take 1 year and just travel because personally I love traveling. And that's one reason which brought me to Southeast Asia. I love this part of the world also from a personal perspective, exploring like very, very different cultures compared to Romania, the country that I've been born and been growing in. I wanted to go to Japan. Interestingly enough, Japan was closed still because of COVID during that year. I didn't end up traveling then, and I ended up actually starting my own company, which was not a plan.
Where was that? Here?
It was in Singapore,
Right.
yes. And coming back to your question, why Singapore? I ended up starting my own company. But before that, in that reflection process, the first decision which I took was where I will base myself in. So where do I want to start and build my life from that point on? And I chose Singapore almost instantly because of few reasons. One was I saw myself growing as a professional here, continuing to contribute to the tech startup ecosystem in various ways, not only as an operator, as you mentioned, but also as a coach, also as a mentor to other startup founders, also as an angel investors, and as a part of a growing tech community. So one was a professional aspect, and second, from a personal perspective, I always felt very attached and very connected emotionally to this part of the world. One of my first jobs was with Intel. Before leaving Intel, actually, I tried for a few years to transfer myself from Romania to Vietnam, Thailand, or Philippines.
Yeah,
'Cause
I remember you telling me.
Yeah. Very interesting how life brings us back to some parts of us which we have not completed, but they
Right.
are still there. There is still ache there. So
Yeah.
I always thought that I'm going to live here and I'm going to explore this part of the world. I always been like curious, especially for Southeast Asia, because of the very different culture and mix of people. Always been fascinated about how different people operate in different environments and how the environment influences yourself as a personality and so on. So yeah, from a personal perspective, I enjoyed being here, living here. And I will end, again, a personal reason. When I came first to Singapore 2016, I didn't know anything about Singapore. I never worked here, anything about the business culture or anything about the social environment. So the first thing which I did was to try to understand what kind of values the Singapore society, not only the business environment, but the Singapore society relies on. And I remember buying few of the books written by Lee Kuan Yew, just spending some time and reading them, understanding the philosophy behind Singapore as a country, Singapore as a society, and also trying to speak with as many people from various backgrounds, various jobs, different professions, not only my UiPath colleagues. And I realized that well, the values that these people display are, and the values that Singapore has been built upon are very similar to the values which I hold true for myself. That was a very important reason for me to be compatible, the place where I live, to be compatible with my own values.
More from a business standpoint, what opportunities do you find interesting? What are you spending time on right now?
As I mentioned earlier, I started my company about 3 years ago. What I started to do then, and I'm still doing today, is working with startup founders who primarily are from Central Eastern Europe. They are looking to expand their business in Southeast Asia, looking at Singapore as the launching pod, as a launching place for their business across other countries. My company and myself in this capacity, I'm doing a lot of advisory consulting, mostly go-to-market related. This is where my experience relies.
Any particular sectors or countries that you focus on, or type of company?
So I tried to be very niche and focused when I started my company. So I realized that my experience is valuable as long as it's practical experience. So I work now with companies who are in B2B space, automation, AI, generative AI companies. That's where my practical experience comes from. So I can give some concrete advisory consulting to these startup founders that I speak with. Most of the startups that I work with are Series A, or they are in transition from Series A to Series B. They have raised at least 2 rounds of VC capital. Let's say seed and Series A, or maybe pre-seed, seed, Series A. They have a significant budget to be able to expand in other countries. And from a technology standpoint, I look at areas as cybersecurity, sustainability, ESG, fintech, and generative AI platforms who might be agnostic in terms of the industry that they cover.
Right. And those are the Eastern European founders you're bringing to Southeast Asia. I know you've also invested in companies here, or you're otherwise helping companies here. How do you decide from the companies here, who do you want to work with? What's the right framework in your mind for thinking about which one to prioritize your limited time on?
Quite similar, I would say, to the profile of the startups that I advise or consult. So the startups in which I have invested have all AI component. They are B2B enterprise startups who have either a very strong AI proposition, let's say in industries like logistics or manufacturing or maritime industry or prop tech. So they cover a very specific niche, but with an AI foundational technology underlying the customer use cases that they are covering. That's one area. Or can be agnostic, but if there are agnostic platforms, I look for the scalability element. So maybe they have different use cases. They are not particular in a certain area, but I see in them the possibility to expand in many countries, different regions, use cases applicable to anywhere in the world. Yeah.
Got it. And when you're selecting these companies, are you looking more at, do you primarily look at the tech and the product first and then the opportunity? Or do you primarily look at sort of what is the business problem you're solving, or which market sector you're going into, or which country, etc.? And then the how you solve it is sort of the secondary. Which comes first? Or maybe in some cases it might be, the founder is great, I don't care what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I care a lot actually about the founders.
Right.
There are 3 main things that I look at with 35%, the quite equal importance when I take the decision, do I want to invest in this company as an angel investors, especially if they are early stage. So I look at the product first. Or it might sound counterintuitive for a person who comes from the go-to-market space or a sales space, but on a personal level, I've always been curious to understand different technologies, understand different way of building software, particularly because I'm a non-tech person. So I feel like I need to invest more time in becoming more techie and becoming more knowledgeable about this space, which I interact with in various ways. So I evaluate the product or platform, the maturity. Secondly, I look at the market opportunity. Is it big enough? What kind of markets do they cover? What kind of customers do they want to work with? And again, in the B2B space, I don't really focus on B2C. Not saying that it's not an opportunity there, Southeast Asia or other parts of the world, but simply because I don't have the experience, I wouldn't really know how to evaluate these companies.
Don't worry, all of us are here in the B2B world. All of our listeners.
Yeah, so probably all the listeners resonate because everyone is B2B. But maybe some companies at some point decide that they want to have like B2B, B2C offering.
Yeah.
And third, I look at not only the founder, but the founding team.
Okay.
And I'll mention why. Usually when there are startups only with one founder, for me it's a question mark. Throughout my experience, I realized that it's almost impossible to build a team, a robust team, and also a sustainable business with only one person who takes the decision at the top for many reasons. I look at the quality of the people who are in the founding team. Can be 2, can be 3, can be 5, doesn't matter how many people, but I try to actually talk with all of them. So before, let's say, making an investment, I at least meet them a few times, meet their teams, try to understand how have they met, why do they work together, what's the dynamics between them, how their thought process, decision process is different or complementary. So yeah, these are some of the things that I look at.
So if you're watching and you want to know how to pitch Malina, she's just given you the inside scoop.
Great point, because I am actually looking forward to connect with as many startup founders as possible. And of course, for some, there might be an opportunity for investment. But I feel also that throughout each and every conversation that I have, I also learned something. This was a strong reason for me for starting my company. When I left UiPath, I felt that I have this operational experience, but I have the experience from one company standpoint only. And what I was really, really missing was learning about new technologies, different industries, different startup founders who come from different countries, different backgrounds, and the environment that they might come from shapes their thinking, the problems that they're trying to solve. So yeah, especially Southeast Asia is such a complex region. So if anyone listening wants to connect, I'm sure we'll have my contact details at the end, or I can just mention, and happy to.
Okay. Now, there are many, company building guides which tell founders very helpfully what to do to become successful, right? But let's flip that to avoiding mistakes. So thinking back to your experience scaling UiPath, can you think of any big blunders or blind spots that are not commonly known to people?
That's a topic I'm very passionate about, and I would frame it as the people topic or HR topic, people in HR related. So one of the greatest and most challenging lessons for me going through the UiPath experience was how to hire people, how to retain people, how to develop talent, how to keep people engaged and motivated while building a global scale company across 50 countries, a company who is pursuing an IPO and then becoming a public listed company. So at different stages, what I've learned through this experience is you need different skills. While you are at Series A, moving to Series B, Series E, EF, while you prepare for IPO, then when you become a public listed company, at each and every stage, as the technology evolves and as the business evolves, also the skills required within different teams will change. Of course, there is a human element involved in this transition. Some of the people, and this was a very strong and painful lesson for me, because I was quite young, I would say, at that time, and I haven't been young in the sense of also not experienced. I mean, UiPath was for me the first company, and hopefully not the last one that I will build on a global scale. The first company where I've seen this tremendous growth in such a short period of time. we had to hire 1,000 people in just a few months.
Mm.
A lot of people looking from the outside would say, oh, you have all the funding, you have all the HR team and the people. So naturally, hiring should be, everyone should probably wants to work for such a company, growth company, a lot of opportunities. So hiring shouldn't be a problem. Even with all the funding and with all the internal resources, hiring this amount of people in short period of time and making sure that everyone is aligned with the culture, aligned with the business, a good fit for the role, a good fit for the team, a good fit for the stage that the company is in, is a huge, huge challenge. And personally, I've done a lot of mistakes, and I'm actually proud in saying this, that I've went through this process, I've done mistakes, and also I took a lot of lessons. I've there mistakes in terms of hiring, maybe people who are not good culture fit, people who are not fit for the role, but they looked good on the resume, people who could be like great in terms of first interactions, but then they might have required a lot of support, a huge support structure. And in a startup, even if you're a well-funded startup, you're still a startup, you still need to move very fast and be hands-on. So a lot of small details which are included in the hiring process or in the hiring process to be a successful one. A lot of learnings for me in that space. If I would reverse and if I'm thinking now, could I have done things better? Could I have done things differently with the experience and mindset which I have now? I think difficult to say. At each and every decision which I took, and especially in terms of hiring, it was a combination of my evaluation and the evaluation of other people who were peers or managers. So it was a decision made of multiple stakeholders. But I would say one thing which I've learned, and I wouldn't compromise now, is making sure that everyone who comes in the organization is a good fit with the values of the company. There is a lot of talk about cultural fit and value fit. I would put value fit because you can have the same values, but the values are expressed through behaviors. We can have the same values, but maybe I express them by X, Y, and Z behavior, and you can express them then by A, B, and C. We could still believe in the same things, doing the things right, doing the things transparently, with humility, with respect, and so on. Just the way we work might be different. So yeah, if I can take time, I could take time back. Probably this is the one thing that I wouldn't compromise.
Were any of these mistakes that you encountered, whether you made them yourself or your colleagues, were they so big that they maybe lost the company 6 months, a year, right? Forget about killing the company. I think that's unlikely. Given that you said, could you have done things better? Does that mean that almost by definition, these are mistakes where you just have to live through them and learn from them? You can't learn from other people. You can't learn by reading a book.
I believe that these mistakes, so I'll start with the second question, are necessary actually in the life of a startup. And there are certain, maybe not even mistakes, I would say like experience moments that a founder or a leader goes through that are required in order to adjust either the team dynamics, the leadership style, or the business to new business context or to a new setup. And I think this was the case for myself. Those mistakes, I've learned so much from each of them. And very interestingly, with a lot of those people who were not a good business fit and who left the company, I'm either now a friend with those people, or I'm in very, very close, I would put like friends, but with some of them we are in very, very close contact. It doesn't mean that those people were not good professionals, not experienced, or not good on a human level.
Yeah.
They were just not fit for the stage of the company or the team that they were in. Some of them like amazing individuals. A very concrete example. So 2017, I was trying to hire the country leader for Thailand.
Okay.
And someone introduced me. So it was a referral, a lady who was in the channel space, 15 years of experience in the Thai market, great profile, 100% fit for the role. We were supposed to have a go-to market sales kickoff. I invited her, although she hasn't joined. She joined the sales kickoff and she was about to sign the contract. And then after joining the 2 days sales kickoff, she informed me that she will join Salesforce, which she did. And somehow in my mind, something was like so strange because everything seemed okay from a personal standpoint, business standpoint. And she came to that event, met everyone in the Southeast Asia team, not only in Thailand. After few months, I tried to understand what did I do wrong in the hiring process, what did I miss. So I spent a lot of time reflecting on this, and it actually helped me refine how do I interact with these people, especially at the leadership level. And it's more about connecting to how the leadership style of those people connects with the leadership style of the company. And that was the missing point, because her leadership style was, and how she saw herself from a leadership growth did not coincide with the plans that UiPath had in Thailand, Southeast Asia. And it was more aligned to Salesforce. Now she is a very, very close friend. She actually moved to Singapore, and we actually spoke a lot about that episode and what each of us learned from it. So coming back to your question, I would say that those mistakes are necessary. Those mistakes refined my interaction, engagement, hiring process. I'm excited for and happy for being part through them. Yeah.
So when we put out this episode, and of course we will tag you on all the relevant
we can tag her as well.
You can tag her.
Yes.
And say, hey, listen, I talked about us.
Yeah, her name is Riami. She's a great leader, and I've learned a lot from her.
I think some of the mistakes that you highlighted were not company killing, but would have lost you 6 months, a year, right? So what are typical things that founders should watch out for? They might still need to experience it, but it'll lose them 6 months. It'll lose them a year.
Again, I think hiring is, especially when hiring key team members, country leaders, go-to-market people who are going to interact with customers, sales, pre-sales, customer support. I guess on the product side, it's not that. Product, of course, the product owner, people who are going to shape the product roadmap, all these very key people in the initial stages of a company need to be very closely aligned with the company vision and with the founder's vision. I would say we were quite fortunate that we haven't had such... Yes, there were situations where there were people who were not a good fit from a cultural business standpoint, but this was not something that really killed the company or a certain team or a certain business unit or a product. And I guess this happened because, so it was not something like very extreme, because we always believed as a company in the collaboration and decisions being taken in a collective way. So no one really had the veto for any kind of decision. Even the CEO of the company, whenever making decision, he was still engaging many other stakeholders. And this goes back to my point of being a solo founder. If you're a solo founder, then who are you going to talk with? Who are your peers in terms of taking key decisions? So my only advice here would be to surround, as a founder or founders, to surround yourself with people that you trust and who have complementary skills. I guess I think that's very, very important.
Of course, there's also always counterexamples to this, right? So Larry Ellison, he's still running the company basically, right? He's not the CEO. He has a CEO brought in some years ago, but he's still the original CTO. He owns more than 40% of this $100 billion company. So he's in charge, right? And I don't think he's the only example. I can give you a few more from the startup space as well. I think I take your point that broadly it's about making sure that you have enough people around you to give you maybe unfiltered feedback, compliment you, and so on and so forth. If it's a solo founder, as long as the solo founder actively seeks out people and, make sure that he hears their true opinion, etc. They're not just telling him a polished version. It might still work.
Just having one opinion who dictates
Yes.
everything, then it's only one person in charge of everything, and which can become also a bottleneck.
That's right.
But having a variety of experiences around, that's very helpful. Both you and Jeremy, I assume you interact with a lot of B2B founders in the Southeast Asian context. Looking at this parallel between solo founders startups and multi-founders startups, how do you make a decision if there is a solo founder rather than multi-founders? And is this like a key point that you take into account?
I would say it's not a key point to be taken into account, but that's just a matter of practical reality. We rarely get pitched by a solo founder,
Oh, okay.
right? They exist, but it doesn't happen so often. I'm actually more concerned if I see a company with a pitch deck that says, I've got 5 people with the title Chief something something.
Yeah.
To me, that's much, much scarier, especially if you are doing Series A or prior, right? For Series C and beyond, you've matured to the point where, yes, you do need some very senior people, etc. Okay, but if it's at this early stage and you have 4 or 5 people with that kind of title, and they may not all even be founders, but you're giving them the chief title. To me, that is not ideal for a variety of reasons. In random order, one reason is like what is the career progression for them, right? Especially if they've come in from outside. You've hired a chief marketing officer. Where does she go after that? So then, they have to be someone really special to say, look, my title doesn't need to change, but I'll just do so much more with a larger and larger canvas. And if so, they're the right person, right? But a lot of people don't think like that. So that's one thing. Another one is you can have, I guess, decision dysfunction.
Yeah.
Again, this can be solved, right? It can be solved in a variety of ways, but I can often see that it's this kind of dysfunction. A third is possibly, too many egos in one room. And probably this is, for me, the most crucial one. So I want to know that, okay, everyone actually really merits that title. Did they demand it as a, condition for being there? Which is not great, right? Or were they actually supposed to be, these are the best people for that kind of thing. So those are things that I care about. So, not so much about whether it's, one person or 3 or 4 or 5. It's more these underlying issues and how they're manifesting themselves. If it turns out that, you have 5 people in those respective roles for the right reasons, great.
Yeah.
So trying not to form judgment sort of upfront. We've also seen companies where, as I'm sure you've come across, they started with maybe 2 or 3 founders, and then one, maybe even 2 of them left, right? And you only have one left.
There are situations
Yeah.
like this, yeah.
So would you call that a solo founder company or a 3-founder company, right? To me, that's a solo founder company. But if the departure was handled and done for the right reasons, I think that's fine. Ideally, you would not have the what they call dead equity on your cap table, right? You shouldn't have someone along for the ride who's actually not contributing anything, right?
Yeah.
So ideally, you've taken care of that. But other than that, I don't really have a problem with solo founders.
I agree with you. There are exceptions. Even in Southeast Asia, I've seen companies with one founder who have been able to move the company forward through many years. I've just met someone recently I was mentioning earlier, at an Angel Central event. They're not in the B2B space. They're in distributor to consumer space, but there are exceptional founders who can navigate through different stages of the company and bring the company forward and build the teams under them, and then can take the business forward. Yeah.
There's someone I knew more than 20 years ago, serial entrepreneur. But the incident I'm talking about was his latest company. When I met him, I asked him, are you nervous about being a solo founder? He says, no. I've done companies before with other co-founders, etc. I've decided I need to adopt the traditional Asian businessman model. What I say goes, everyone does what I say, everyone fall in line. Okay. And his reasoning was that if you have co-founders, etc., first of all, you got to get consensus. And that is may not always be possible. Second thing he said was, you mentioned earlier, if there's a single person, you might have a bottleneck. He had exactly the opposite view. Right? He said, I'm the solo guy. I can be very efficient.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If a decision is important enough to warrant my attention, I'm going to decide and move on. Decide, move on. Decide, move on. It's a bit like being president of a country or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Like Singapore model.
Right. Exactly. That's why he said Asian businessman.
Yes.
When he said Asian, he meant Singapore. Okay. He didn't mean Korea or Japan.
Yeah.
As it turns out, much later, I don't know how much this way of doing business has to do with it, but the business has not done well, right? They raised a lot of money, etc. during the heyday, during their heyday, grew a lot. They were in the press everywhere, all those kinds of things. But since then, they've sort of disappeared. I'm guessing he still sort of owns and runs a business, but all the investors have basically sort of written it off.
Understand. Yeah, multiple situations.
Yes.
And as an angel investor, I take each and every case by case.
Yeah.
And trying not to be biased, saying like, oh, this way or that way, it's better or better. And also geography might depend.
Yes.
The markets that they're targeting might depend. So
Yeah.
a multitude of factors.
Okay, so let's go to listener questions. Remember that you can send in questions for our guests. Details on how to do that are in the description. We've had very enthusiastic response. I've not been able to take all of the questions that came in. I've selected a few. So here's one. King Arthur from a company called AI Buyer has developed a procurement automation platform. And he's finding that many businesses think procurement is a clerical job and therefore not really a priority. And as a result, they leave lots of money on the table. Okay. So his question is, how would you market to a business that does not acknowledge that it has a problem?
First of all, I would recommend to have a very, from a product standpoint, a very visual demo. In UiPath case and in cases that I've seen successful, what matters with such buyers are to have visual demo. You are a software platform, this is a must-have. If you don't have, no chance. To have a possibility of proof of concept or proof of value, which would allow your customers or potential customers to try and visualize what would be the ROI that they would get from using your software on a smaller scale. That's the second which I would recommend. And trying to understand, so for this profile, what is the value? Why such a company would buy a software like theirs? Because there are many AI procurement platforms. What's the value in it? What's the differentiator? How they are different compared to others? And again, focusing on ROI, what can be measured, how the business value can be demonstrated on top of the product value. Yeah.
So let me pretend that I'm actually the guy, right? So you give me at least two ideas. One is about ROI, another one is having a demo. But if my potential customer is saying, look, this is not even a problem for me, just go away, I don't want to talk to you, what would I do? Do I literally say I'm going to kidnap you and make sure you watch my demo?
Yeah, there are a lot of such buyers and companies who they might benefit of your solution, but they either don't have the time to engage with you, and most of the situations a problem. Or what happens these days is that companies have so many technologies. What I see a lot right now, it's a trend of consolidate a lot of the platforms and have, instead of 100 technologies, to have 20 and to be able to do the same thing or actually more with the same number of technologies. What I've seen working in such cases is having a more human approach. So let's say that the product and a very structured approach didn't work. What I've done and seen successful is having very casual, friendly events where we might have a breakfast session or a customer sharing session. And we might bring existing customers, people also from procurement or similar roles that would share their own benefits out of using their platform. So it's not us, the vendor, trying to sell, but rather just people interacting and sharing, trying to expose why are they using your software.
Got it.
I would go for that approach.
So one of our questions, whose name is Harinder, says, why does enterprise lag behind consumer and SME in adopting modern marketing technologies? For example, he says, consumer and SME tech, they use product-led growth, PLG, AI content, attribution intelligence, and a whole lot more stuff, right? To create and optimize a funnel. He's not said this, but I'm going to a little bit paraphrase. Why does B2B just stick with, okay, we'll sponsor a few events and then we'll do cold calls? Why don't we get more sophisticated about marketing? First of all, do you think he's even right? And if he's right, then why aren't they doing more of that?
I'm not sure where our listener has seen this kind of behavior. From what I can observe right now in the B2B space, things have started to change. Our listener is mentioning, I think it's an approach which indeed and let's sponsor some events and have inside sales people just calling customers. I think this was indeed the approach until COVID.
Right.
And during COVID, I think I've seen a lot of B2B startup scale-ups changing, adjusting, adopting different, more modern marketing strategies and aligning marketing to be sales function rather than standalone function. Because events could not happen in COVID, I think a lot of companies have seen that we need to adapt and adjust. And then after COVID, a lot of companies didn't have any more the budgets, which they used to have before. There were so many layoffs, so many reorgs. So I see most of the companies right now, at least in the tech B2B startup space that I'm working with, trying to be as nimble and agile as possible, actually dropping their events budget and trying to do something else, something more customer-centric but more impactful. Something like very simple, the example which I gave earlier, let's do a lunch and learn or a breakfast session, but not sponsor 40K or a 50K conference.
To be clear, the events thing was something that I said. I think he was basically saying, why aren't we using, for example, in consumer, there's product-led growth. For example, Dropbox, there's a lot of used to. That's how they got started.
Yes.
Atlassian, many of these other companies, right? The user starts using it and then it grows from there rather than someone coming and selling it to you. Another one would be word-of-mouth marketing and doing that in a systematic way, not simply saying, oh, Malina used my product today, will you tell somebody else? But running like a hardcore referral program, stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
So he's saying people are doing that in consumer tech and in SME tech. Why not in enterprise?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with this view because I see quite a lot of companies doing it.
Right.
Yeah. Even in the case of UiPath, which is not a new company, it's 20 years company now, we used to adopt this kind of strategy since 2015.
Right.
So 10 years ago. The companies in the automation space, the competitors of UiPath, for example, Blue Prism Automation, Anywhere, they were also taking similar approaches. If I look now at generative AI platforms or low-code, no-code platforms, they are acting almost like consumer brands, but in the B2B space.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of the things have changed in the last 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Marketing as a function, as I mentioned earlier, I see it more and more under the sales umbrella. Even large companies have dedicated global marketing leader, but he's subordinate or reporting to the chief revenue officer.
Yep. I've in fact not just seen this, but actually advised in a couple of our companies' cases. But only once you get to a certain maturity.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Super early, you just got to go and make sure that you're talking to each customer.
Yeah.
Right? You're not buying ads on wherever and doing attribution. That's not the job. Ryan from Deep Insight Labs asks, how can early stage startups who have an MVP form partnerships? We mentioned channels earlier. Form partnerships with established companies to scale up distribution and build their reputation.
One of my favorite topics, distribution and the channel management. Newer, up-to-date example, in UiPath, we took the decision from early stage to base our sales strategy on a channel expansion strategy. This is one of the first things which I recommend to, I would say, 90% of the companies which I advise today, because they are in the B2B enterprise space. So the reason why I suggest them this approach is because you can never have enough budget to hire enough salespeople to build a huge direct sales workforce.
Yeah.
And even if you have, let's say, unlimited budget, do you really want to spend that budget only on hiring salespeople?
Yeah.
Can you have a more strategic and cost-efficient approach? In UiPath and in the startups that I advise, I recommend to build a channel strategy. Can look in different ways for different companies, but essentially it's either a distribution model where you have distributors in different countries, and under them you have a network of reseller partners, system integrators, value-added resellers, implementation partners. So that's a model which I recommend. This is for more complex companies, a model that we use for UiPath at later stages from 2022 onwards. But if you're like, depending on the stage that our company listener is, if it's let's say a Series A or quite early in their journey, just a reseller model would be good enough. So no need to have a multi-tier distribution model with distributor resellers and so on. Just appointing a few resellers in the markets that they want to do business in, and making sure, I would say, to enable those resellers. The mistake which I see quite often is that startups are engaging with a lot of partners. That's the easy part, just signing partnership agreements. But the missing part is enabling those partners from sales, pre-sales, professional services, customer in success perspective, because essentially those partners, resellers, are going to be your workforce, the indirect workforce, which is going to sell on behalf of your startups. A lot of startups don't really spend the time in training, enabling those partners. So that's why I see quite a lot of these partnerships not being really successful. Yeah.
And so this one was for, you said if it's early stage, they can go after just reseller. You don't need to have a complex pyramid of people. So that works even when you're just at the MVP stage, would you say?
I wouldn't recommend it at an MVP stage because the question is, what do you sell at that point in time?
Right.
I would recommend this model once you have a sellable product or a sellable platform, let's say, seed onwards, or even Series A onwards, depending on the maturity level of the product. I think once you're at MVP stage, the first and sole priority should focus to transition the product from MVP to a sellable version that can have a number of customers. So at that stage, product and first customers, I would put these two areas as the main priority.
Got it. You've shared a lot of great tactical advice. I want to zoom out back to one final high-level question. What is one thing you believe about company building that most people would disagree with?
I'll go back to the people aspect. Personally, I have built throughout the years and throughout my experience in many countries, many companies. I built a very human-centric leadership style, very human-centric investment style and working style. I'm a big believer that once you invest in people, they will provide, from a company standpoint, if you invest in building the talent, keeping people engaged, motivated, allowing them to develop on a personal and professional level within the company context, they can provide exceptional results rather than just having a culture where everyone is doing a little bit of everything, but not having a conscious leadership style where you invest in each and every individual. So what I'm seeing right now, and why I mention this, because we are, especially again after COVID and in the generative AI era that we are in, there is a lot of emphasis on productivity. A lot of the startups who I see in this space focus a lot on, let's build the most amazing technology, let's build the most amazing technology as fast as possible, invest in AI resources and so on. But I don't see on an equal time, energy, and focus being spent on how do you build leadership in your company. It's again connected with the topic which we spoke a bit earlier. How do you invest in people that and in your as a founder? And this, I believe, this approach works if it's a top-down approach where the leaders or the founders, they understand that I need to invest in my C-1 level, and then the C-1 level understand I need to invest in C-2, and so on and so forth, and up to the execution level. So each and every level is empowered to take the best decision, to make the most of their job, and they have all the resources and the support.
This doesn't sound like something people would disagree with, though. This sounds like everyone should do it.
Yeah. I think it's very common. It's not like rocket science.
Right.
I think it's not something uncommon. I think it's not something new. But I think it's something quite overlooked.
People forget to do it.
Yeah, because it's such a common sense thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes people take it for granted. I have an HR team, or I have maybe people team, and they will do all the training, certification, again, coming back to generative AI, Some of the companies I've seen, they are investing in people from a upskill perspective, upskill, cross-skill. But what I'm talking more about is about people empowerment and leadership. That, again, comes from top down. And it requires a lot of time for leaders to spend consciously, intentionally on this topic, almost on a daily basis interaction with their employees. I would love to see this approach adopted in more companies. And of course, productivity, especially in the generative AI era, it's a given. So my passion lately and what I really look forward to see more in the tech B2B space is how do we make sure that we build the right leadership skills for the new type of companies which we have, the new technology which we are developing today.
If our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
A few ways. They can either access my website, which is malinaplaton.com, connect with me on LinkedIn. Platon Andra is my tag name on LinkedIn. They can also write me on my Gmail, which is andra.platon@gmail.com.
Thank you.
I'm happy to connect and answer.
And thank you for being so generous with your contact details. We'll put them in the description as well, so people don't need to memorize it right now.
Yeah, sure.
And any questions that weren't covered in this episode will actually be featured in subsequent episodes, so people shouldn't worry about that either. More questions can always come in, as I said. So let's leave it there. Tune in again for the next episode of Unfair Advantage from Tin Man Capital. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Tin Man Capital also organizes events and shares other resources for founders and investors and everyone else in the community. To stay in the loop, follow our company LinkedIn page or go to www.tinman.asia for more information. And remember, if you like this episode, tell your friends. If you didn't like it, tell your enemies.